This conference will now be recorded.
We will be talking today about coastal and ocean acidification communication in aquariums and zoos. The nice thing about doing a joint meeting like this is we're attempting to cover the U.S. Southeast as well as all throughout the Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico regions. And a little bit about the coastal acidification networks. Let me switch to the next slide. We are scientists, federal, tribal, and state agency representatives, and research managers, NGOs, and industry partners. These are groups throughout the U.S. and the Caribbean, put together by the NOAA Ocean Acidification Program to present information on ocean and coastal acidification in our regions, but to also work on proposals within groups and to work towards education as well. SOCAN, the Southeast group, covers North Carolina to the west coast of Florida, while GCAN covers Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, as well as international partners throughout the Gulf. Again, kind of our goals in a nutshell are to guide regional observation, research, and modeling, understand local drivers of acidification, contribute to studies that will help predict consequences for marine resources and local communities, coordinate best practices for monitoring and data collection, and to educate stakeholders on coastal and ocean acidification impacts and solutions. We do have individual websites that you can go to learn more about each of our groups. You can also sign up for newsletters within each of us. We host a number of different webinars and town halls and sessions throughout the years. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to any of us in these cans. So before I introduce our speakers, I just have a few set of guidelines here for us. All attendees are hopefully in listen-only mode, meaning that you're muted. If you haven't muted yourself, please do so. Otherwise, we will attempt to mute you during the presentations. During the presentations, you can always enter questions in the chat. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the three speakers. After each speaker has spoken, at the end, we'll have more of like a discussion session altogether. So this meeting will be recorded and posted on the SOCAN and GCAN websites, as well as the Socorro YouTube channel. So that's where this will definitely live, and you'll be able to see it and share it with other colleagues who maybe couldn't make it today. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is Katie St. Clair. She is the manager of the Sea Life facility at Texas A&M University in Galveston. She oversees the facility's research, training, and outreach activities, providing expertise in life support system design, animal husbandry, and water quality management. She obtained her Master's of Science in the Wildlife and Fisheries Sciences from Texas A&M, where her research focused on stable isotope dynamics and cownose ray epidermal tissue, and her Bachelor's of Science in Marine Biology and a Bachelor's of Science in Marine Fisheries from Texas A&M in Galveston. The second speaker will be Dr. Kristen Ranges. She is the education manager at Mote Marine Laboratory Science Education Aquarium, where she develops and evaluates marine STEM curricula that strengthen student understanding and broaden perspectives on science and technology careers. She earned her JD from the University of Miami School of Law and her PhD from the University of Residential School of Marine, Atmospheric, and Earth Sciences. Her doctoral research investigated how oil exposure impacts the nervous system and behavior in zebrafish, with the goal of advancing the admissibility of animal model studies and toxic tort litigation. And lastly, we have Jamie. She's the Community Engagement Supervisor at Jacksonville Zoo and Botanical Gardens. Jamie earned her master's degree in conservation biology with a concentration on community education. She has served as an interpretive park ranger with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, an informed educator prior to working at Jacksonville Zoo and Botanical Gardens. She has been with Jacksonville Zoo since 2020, and in that time has worked to grow the capacity for climate change education as part of the zoo's educational programming. So with that, I will stop sharing my slides and pass it over to Katie.
Good afternoon, everybody. Let me get my slides up for y'all. And just a quick check that everybody can see my title slide.
Yes, looks great.
Perfect. Well, howdy everybody, and good afternoon. Thank you so much to SOCAN and GCAN for hosting this webinar, and thank you for joining us today. I wanted to share a little bit about how controlled experimental facilities like the Sea Life facility provide the tools and resources that scientists need to really explore complex issues and environmental stressors like ocean acidification and how those stressors impact our marine environments. And then, of course, talk a little bit how we engage our community, our local community, to learn more about the research we do here at the facility and its impact on conservation and management practices. So, as mentioned, I've served as the manager of the Sea Life facility here at Texas A&M University of Galveston for the last 11 years, and I'm really overseeing all aspects of our operations, whether that's research, training of our student staff, and then, of course, our outreach to our local community and partners. The Sea Life facility is an adaptable space for controlled experiments with living organisms to support the world-class scientific inquiry and education in marine husbandry and life support systems. As you can see in that top left corner, we have a variety of tank rooms. What you're looking at there is our main tank room. We also have additional controlled spaces, food prep room, light walls, and other assorted spaces that our researchers can utilize. And it was built with the intention of being a flexible, dynamic lab space. We primarily work with our colleagues in the Department of Marine Biology within the College of Marine Sciences and Maritime Studies. And of course, they're working with a wide variety of taxa across a wide variety of ecosystems. And so part of my responsibility, of course, is working with our researchers to build new systems, modify our infrastructure, and really create those targeted systems that then allow those researchers to explore the research question they are interested in. And as you can see pictured, we work again with a wide variety of taxa as well as disciplines. And we typically have about 10 to 15 projects at any given time, primarily driven by graduate and undergraduate students. And then, of course, we also support a wide range of activities in collaboration with the Department of Marine Biology. So when we think about projects and issues such or environmental stressors such as ocean acidification, as this diagram showing, there are a lot of factors that will influence ocean acidification and its impacts on organisms and ecosystems. And these can be both natural as well as anthropogenic. But here in the facility, we do have that ability to control every aspect, every parameter that our experimental organisms experience, and which allows our researchers to really isolate a specific variable, temperature, pH, dissolved oxygen levels, and any other variables of interest. And this is, of course, can be really critical as we try to parse and really explore these complex stressors. And of course, controlled studies are going to be really important to help complement the field work that's being done, monitoring efforts that are being done out in our marine and coastal environments, and again, really help answer questions that really can't be addressed fully in a field environment. Great example, specifically dealing with ocean acidification, is a study we worked with the research conglomerate Atomex several years ago, which was really looking broadly at how the impacts of spilled oil and dispersants impact marine microbes and the formation of marine snow. Their work in the Sea Life facility focused primarily on generating marine snow in the lab using these roller tables, which we have a diagram there in the lower left, and then introducing a variety of treatments of simulated spilled oil, chemical dispersants, and in the case of this study, ocean acidification, and again, how that those different treatments impacted marine snow. And real quick, I have a video here. So you can see these roller tables. They will go out and collect water from our nearshore or offshore environments, place the water into these cylindrical tanks, set them up on a roller table, and then spin them for a variety of time series. And what you see there are going to be that marine snow that is generated. And with this particular study, looking across these 5 different treatments and 1 control, looking at how there's differences in the number of marine snow aggregates generated, as well as the size of those marine snow. With our, of course, this is a great area for our researchers, but it's also a really great space to bring in our local community into the facility and really help connect them to what we do here at the university. We have over 3,000 visitors annually. A large majority of this will be our prospective students and families to campus. We also have a robust Sea Camp and Sea Campus Kids summer programming for ages 4 to 18. And we also have local school districts, community groups, scout troops, senior citizen groups that are interested in coming to our campus and, again, learning about what we're doing here at the Sea Life facility. And so as we bring visitors into the facility, we first want to really kind of have them think about their local environment and what they experience as they're coming onto Galveston Island, if they live in the region, and really connect them to those marine and coastal ecosystems. So we have a couple of display aquaria that really focus on some local ecosystems like oyster reefs, as well as the Flower Gardens Banks National Marine Sanctuary. And this is, of course, a great opportunity for our staff to capture our visitors' interest visually and then provide that touch point of familiarity. From there, these visitors are guided through, the laboratory experimental spaces and get up close and personal to our current research projects. And we get to discuss how we balance the husbandry of these organisms, the management of the water quality, and of course, how we operate and design our life support systems to meet the experimental objectives. And ultimately, we connect that back to how science, of course, is done in the facility and how we share that data, how we share that analysis with our conservation and management partners, such as Texas Parks and Wildlife, NOAA, and other groups. In addition to tours, we also have an opportunity to reach our local community through media features, social media, partnering again with our Sea Camp programs. And really our goal here is, when visitors can see these experiments and their outcomes are explained in an accessible manner, the connection between the everyday choice that they make in their lives to policy decisions, and of course the health of the oceans becomes really tangible for them. And we always end our sessions with a great Q&A, kind of delving into their interest and what they saw and explaining again what we're doing. And of course, we cannot do the research, the outreach that we do here at the Sea Life facility without our phenomenal undergraduate and graduate staff of student technicians and interns. They're involved in every aspect of our operations, and of course their experiences in the Sea Life facility prepare them to enter into careers in academia, animal research, aquaculture, and of course aquarium science. So with that, the QR code there is a link to a more in-depth tour of our facility, and of course I'm happy to answer questions at the end of the session, and my contact information is there as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. That was excellent. Our next speaker, and again, please, if you have questions and you're thinking about them, put them in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. Our next speaker is Dr. Kristen Ranges.
Are you able to see my screen? Hopefully.
Yes, you're good.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much for joining. Like Emily mentioned, my name is Dr. Kristen Ranges. Currently, I am the Education Manager at Mote's new Science Education Aquarium called Mote C. And so at Mote, our mission is to connect people to science in ways that are meaningful and hands-on and impactful in a way that is going to eventually lead to really positive and long-term environmental change. And we believe that aquariums and zoos have a really unique role to play in this space in advancing science education and outreach. And so I'm excited to share with you how we're approaching that work at Mote. So here's what we're going to go into in this session. First, just a quick overview of Mote C and our new education spaces. And then I'll share how we've been developing our educational programs, especially after conducting a needs assessment with local schools that's guiding sort of what our science curriculum is going to look like. And then we'll dive into some of those key findings, including areas where aquariums and zoos can really make a difference, and then sort of wrap up with a look ahead for Mote specifically, but again, how these findings can be applied towards aquariums and zoos in terms of abstract science concepts and outreach. So our goal in Mote education is always, but especially with the opening of Mote C, to provide immersive, hands-on STEM education in a real-world marine context. And so the new aquarium, our science education aquarium, is really designed to reach a larger and a more diverse audience, not only through our exhibits, but through educational experiences as well. Just like the name suggests, education is really going to be the focus. Science education is going to be the focus of this new facility. And so within our new aquarium, we actually have 3 STEM teaching labs that are going to give us the ability to host programs where students are going to be able to actively engage with science, not just sort of passively learn about it through signage or sort of, one-off interactives that we typically have in our aquarium settings. So I'm not going to play this whole video now just for time, but if you go on YouTube, you can see a fly-through rendering of our aquarium. If you just look up inside Mote Science Education Aquarium, the virtual tour. We are very close to opening though. Our ribbon cutting is next Friday, and we open a few days after that. As you can see behind me, we are all moved out. But just to give you a sense of scale and how we are focusing on the science education piece within our new facility, within Mote C, there's going to be 3 STEM teaching laboratories, which I'll talk more about in a second. There's going to be 5 workforce development labs. So again, science is really the attraction within our new facility. And then we're also going to have a resource library. So again, just bringing science to the public, to those that want to learn about it. And so again, these spaces are really just going to allow us to connect learners. I don't just want to say students because it's more than just our field trips and our school programs. It's all types of learners, bringing them in direct contact with the ongoing science and our conservation efforts. So here's that closer look at those 3 STEM teaching laboratories that I mentioned. This is sort of our way to, again, highlight the importance of our mission, that it's not just about the science, but it's about communicating the science and making sure that the work we're doing is accessible to everybody and it is digestible to all different learners. And so one of our teaching labs is going to be marine ecology focused. And so, of course, a lot of conservation concepts are going to be the focus of this lab. We're going to have some animal ambassadors housed in this space. Our second lab is focused on our biomedical and immunology work. And then our third is going to be ocean technology focused. So again, like the name suggests, a lot of our bigger pieces of technology, but also some of the smaller technology that we use within Mote Science, down to our beach conditions reporting system app. All of that will be housed in there. So again, these spaces were designed to help us sort of facilitate our educational programs and bring science to all different types of learners. So what I really want to share today is that before we redesigned our programs for these spaces, we wanted to be sure that we were aligning our programs and our lessons and our curricula with what teachers and learners actually need and want. And so we conducted a comprehensive needs assessment, and we met with about half of all of the traditional public schools across Sarasota and Manatee counties, which are our local counties here. And that's a pretty big reach. And so it gave us a pretty clear picture of where informal learning institutions like aquariums and zoos and other science centers can really best support traditional instruction for learners. And what we found was somewhat expected, but also pretty surprising in some aspects. So teachers were able to identify certain priority areas. And 2 that stood out to us as being especially important were the Nature of Science benchmark, which is a state standard that is tested for students, and then also the integration of English language arts into science learning as we build out these different types of educational experiences centered around especially abstract science concepts. So starting with this Nature of Science key finding that we found, teachers really told us, and of course this is something that we can see through published state testing scores, this is constantly an area where students struggle. They tend to score lower on assessments, and these are really the standards that deal a lot with how science is done, right? So how we design experiments, how we compare variables, how we evaluate evidence. Again, these more abstract concepts that are kind of hard to grasp without actually doing them, right? Reading about what variables are, especially at a young age when you don't have exposure to the field, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. You don't really understand the value of it without seeing how different variables can lead to different outcomes. So again, actually doing the science is something that was emphasized very, very heavily throughout this needs assessment. So to bridge this gap in learning, teachers are really looking to informal learning environments for more authentic, hands-on opportunities for students to experience science as a process. And this is where places like aquariums and zoos and science centers can really, really shine, because we have the unique resources and the right settings to make those abstract processes really visible in ways that the traditional formal learning classroom settings often can't, whether that's because they're really structured out throughout the day, science isn't the priority necessarily within the day, or they don't have the resources, right? They don't have a set of microscopes for everybody, or they aren't able to get, coral samples to explain the concepts of ocean acidification. So again, this is where centers like ours are able to kind of shine in this space. So at Mote in particular, this is where the vision for the Science Education Aquarium really came to light. So again, our 3 STEM teaching labs, they weren't built just as generic spaces. They were kind of built to cater to this need and this want that we learned throughout our needs assessment. It's sort of this purposeful design around what we learned is sort of lacking within our local community. And so you'll notice even in the naming, I'm referring to it as teaching labs, right? Rather than classrooms, which is what we traditionally would call our spaces. And that's intentional, right? Because we want to design for immersion, right? For experimentation, really creating this sense of place and this sense of belonging for students. Again, experiencing science is sort of the whole goal now. So in addition to the physical spaces, we also have specialized tools to help students experience science. Again, these abstract concepts like ocean acidification, not just hear about them. And so just as important as our labs are our connection to our scientists that are doing the research. And this collaboration, one that is, just like Katie mentioned at her location as well, something that's unique to particular types of aquariums and zoos and science centers, is that we're able to design lessons and programs where students are able to actively work with authentic data, right? And authentic resources like live corals in this example, which I'll talk about for a second. So we're able to design lessons and programs where, again, students are actively working with science rather than just sort of passively learning or hearing about it. And so the example I have displayed here is one activity where students are using Fiji or ImageJ software to measure coral growth, right? So they compare coral fragments grown under different conditions. We have a basic control, an ocean warming, an acidification, and a combination. So instead of being told, ocean acidification can slow growth, right? That's what they would typically learn about in their science classes. What they can do now is they can actually measure growth themselves. They can see the differences with their own eyes. They can understand how different environmental conditions have these different effects. This is something that's a struggle for traditional science teachers to teach, right? This is something that is unique and that can only be learned in really particular settings that are designed for this type of education. And so what it does is it transforms ocean acidification, for example, this abstract concept, into something that's concrete and visible and memorable for students. And in doing so, we're directly addressing those nature of science standards that teachers really, really hit on in that needs assessment. And so this was the second key finding that was really interesting for us. Sort of surprising in a way, how many times it came up with teachers, is paying attention to the integration of English language arts when teaching abstract science topics. So teachers heavily emphasized, as you will see in these notes that we got back from a workshop that we hosted with teachers, the word ocean acidification was a big one. Teachers could not pull out enough that the word acidification is actually really challenging for students, right? taking into account these complex terms that seem very commonplace for people in the field, in the industry, is actually something that we need to parse out for many, many learners. So even here, for example, ification, you can't necessarily use that for a lot of age groups. You have to actually spell out that ocean acidification means to make the ocean more acidic. You can't actually throw in the word acidification. So that's something that was new to us, right? We just assumed that we can use that type of language. So being especially cognizant of things like that was something that was I don't want to say surprising, right? Of course, we always know to be especially nuanced when we're talking about leveling language. But again, thinking about sort of field and industry terms and how we maybe need to parse them out a little bit and think more about what they mean for students rather than industry standards. So again, just something to think about as we develop different types of lessons and programs and curriculum, especially in the context of abstract topics like ocean acidification. The other thing you might notice that was underscored a lot here is climate change. Something else that was often called out by teachers throughout this needs assessment was that we often group together many impacts, right? So when we say climate change, we sort of instinctively think of ocean warming and acidification and all the things that come with it. Students aren't necessarily cataloging impacts that way. So we shouldn't necessarily rely on catch-all phrases like climate change, spelling out everything as clear as possible and not necessarily relying on these terms to mean things to students in the same way they do for us. So that's something that was, again, new for us, not necessarily surprising, I should say, but new for us, something that was very important to teachers. So these are all things that we are bringing with us into our new programming and hopefully going to make a difference in sort of what impact that has on students, especially with content retention going forward. So looking ahead, where does this really leave us? Like I said, our needs assessment really showed us that informal learning settings like aquariums and zoos, they have this real opportunity to help students tackle challenging and abstract science concepts like ocean acidification, as long as they are done with real attention to detail and really filling the gap. So instead of just conveying what we want to convey, also meeting the needs of the students where they're at, and finding that blend is where we're going to have sort of the most purchase. Where we're going to have sort of the most impacts, not only on students' retention of the content and engagement with the content, but what we're really after is that environmental change and that positive environmental impact. So again, I thought this was something neat. This was a unique opportunity for us to kind of conduct this needs assessment. That only would have came about if within the building of Mote. This was not something that we would have undertaken otherwise. So I wanted to share this unique opportunity for us. And thank you all for allowing me to share a little bit about our project and our new programs. I have my contact information here for any other follow-up questions, but I will take questions at the end of this presentation as well too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristen. And I might be a little biased, but I can't wait for the new aquarium to open. All right. And then lastly, we have Jamie. So Jamie, I'll pass it over to you.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. I'm just going to switch which screens. Okay. That I'm looking at the slideshow while I present. Well, hello everybody. Very excited to be here and joining our previous speakers. I was nodding my head along to a lot of the things that Katie and Kristen were saying, so I think this will be a really fun kind of tie together of everything. But just to give a little bit of an introduction, I'm Jamie Lynn Lankenau. I'm the Community Engagement Supervisor at Jacksonville Zoo and Botanical Gardens. And today I'm going to be talking about how we incorporate climate change education and communication into a lot of our programming here at the zoo, as well as our programs offsite. And just to get started, I'm going to do a little overview. So we're over on the other coast here in Florida. And we are located northeast Florida, so we're just about 20 miles south of the Georgia border, and we're located right along the Trout River, which is a tributary to the St. Johns River, which empties into the Atlantic Ocean. We're an AZA accredited facility, which Mote is as well. And AZA stands for the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and that just holds us to a accreditation standard. That means we're meeting the highest care for our animals, as well as education, among a lot of other things here at the zoo. And so that's where a lot of our kind of programming roots from, as well as a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today, is rooted in. We, similarly to Mote, are going to be opening a new main entrance soon in a new facility here on site. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about that in a minute. And we also have recently undergone a rebranding, which is our new logo, and are now using the term botanical gardens in our title, which is fantastic to represent our awesome gardens here on site. So yeah, located here in Northeast Florida, we get a lot of people that are driving down 95 on their way to Disney. We get a lot of people that are out here at the beaches, and that usually results in about 1 million visitors every year. And our zoo, you can kind of see an overview too of our location along the Trout River there, with the skyline of Jacksonville in the background. So we're just off the 95 and get a lot of visitors that way. And of course, we have our regional and our global conservation work that we share with guests when they come and visit in the park. And every time a ticket is bought to the zoo and gardens, that adds to our conservation fund, which allows that regional and global work to happen. So just as a quick overview, I always think it's fun to share kind of what our collection of species looks like. And we currently have, this was July's, so this changes, a little bit, but this was the last overall count that we have, 210 different species that guests can see when they come to our park, and that's over 3,000 specimens in total. And you can kind of see a breakdown of those different animals. But today I'm going to be focusing on the total human visitors that we have, again, that about 1 million every year, and how we are talking about very important issues when it comes to environmental education, and particularly climate change. So just a quick little overview, because this is going to tie into why climate change is such a huge thematic part of our interpretation plan. But our new main entrance is opening very soon in early 2026, which is very exciting. And our new main entrance is not only going to be an upgrade to our facility, but it's also going to be the first, when people enter the park, the first thing they're going to see is our Manatee River. And that means that when they enter the zoo, the first species that they'll see will be a native species here to Florida, and a species that is endangered and under a lot of stress for different reasons in our region. And it will be neat to be able to interpret and have people connect to this species when they first enter the park. So there's just some bits of our construction. It actually looks even a little bit more underway now, but just to see a little bit where we're at. So I'll be focusing today on our learning and conservation engagement department. So ultimately our education outreach here at the zoo and what that looks like on site, again, as well as off site with all our different programming, with a huge focus of our interpretation on site. So our education team here at the park is very expansive. We have over 50 education employees. That is a mixture of part and full-time staff. And we're divided into 4 teams. And so our whole main purpose in the education department, our mission, is to connect our community to wildlife and wild places. And we do that obviously here through the park by people engaging with animals that they see. But we also do that with a lot of programming dedicated to different audiences. So to kids all the way to adults. And I'll be talking about some of our adult programming in a little while. And we have 4 teams that do all this work. So our interpretation engagement team focuses on our education all here at the zoo, in our park, and through signage, as well as our staff that are out in the park every single day talking to different guests at different areas. We also have our education engagement team, which is our K through 12 programming. So that includes our camps, as well as our Homeschool Academy, stroller safari. So basically programs you can imagine from ages 0 to later in middle school. And our community engagement team also takes a little bit more of that education further through our high school ages programming. And we have a teen employment program here that is grant funded and allows our teens to become educators here at the park. And our community engagement team also really focuses on reaching the community through partnerships. And I'll be talking about partnerships in a little bit as well in our community, as well as in our whole region. And then we also have our volunteers and interns that are on site all the time throughout the park and gaining hands-on experience, as well as a lot of volunteers that act as our interpretation addition to our interpretation staff in the park and educating guests as they come in about what we do here and why we do what we do. So because our programming takes place on site and in the community, it's split between various programs. Some of that is outreach, as well as classes and camps and things that take place here on site. And again, for every age. So when talking specifically about climate education, because this is such an important topic, when people come to a place where they're exposed to nature and where they're in a space to be excited, that really is where we can get people excited to learn. And climate education is part of our thematic interpretation plan. So it's a piece of what we will be focusing on throughout our entire, when you visit our park, everything that you see, you will have a piece of different themes, and climate education is a big piece of that education here on site. We also have climate communication training for staff, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more depth, and guest interactions, as well as signage throughout the park that people will be able to see. So a lot of this with our new main entrance and a lot of our renovations is being updated. So we are, you will be seeing new signs and updated interpretation themes throughout the park. And so one thing that we are utilizing to talk about climate change is a communication method. The National Network and Ocean and Climate Change Communication has used, I'm sorry, I'm having some glitches on my screen and it's confusing me. We train our staff here on site in NOCI's communication, climate change communication. And so this climate change communication is tested and proven to engage audiences and to basically talk about climate change in a way that makes it digestible for everybody. So obviously when we talk about climate and ocean acidification, climate change and ocean acidification, we are talking really high level science, and how can we bring that down so that we can talk to people where they're at and meet them with the education that they have. And this is all rooted in very hope-based communication, so that we can make a difference for these issues that we are seeing in our environment, and as well is really rooted in civic and community-minded action. So action that is going to be furthering our communities together, and it's going to be, again, rooted in something that we can change together. And so this communication network is used in over 250 zoos and aquariums, as well as various institutions, including National Park Service, state parks across the country. And the whole purpose is that if we get a lot of people speaking the same language when we're talking about climate change, then we'll be able to shift the narrative and have more of these conversations that we need to have. So here at Jacksonville Zoo and Botanical Gardens, we incorporate this into a lot of our different messaging. And I just have an example here of how NOCI is incorporated into having these conversations. So explanatory metaphors is a big piece of it. So when we have these, when we are talking about ocean acidification, or when we are talking about climate change, how do we break that down and make it digestible for the everyday person? And a lot of that times that happens through metaphors, so something that everybody can understand. And I have a couple examples of the explanatory metaphors, that are used in NOCI climate change communication methods. And again, these can be used and plugged into any time we're having a conversation in the park. So if we are talking about our sea otters, if we're talking about our manatees or our stingrays, or even our tigers, how can we bring that lesson and incorporate climate change education into what we're talking about? And a lot of times that's done through interpretation that ties in metaphors. So how we incorporate Gnocchi at the Zoo Botanical Gardens is by training our education staff in this climate communication method, as well as having hosting workshops and having practices. So like working with each other and hosting practice sessions. And then, of course, communication and programming in the park. So I'm going to next be highlighting a little bit of our programming that we have that we incorporate climate communication into. So our adult programs are a great audience for us to dive a little deeper into the discussion of issues such as climate change. And we have a variety of topic classes in our adult, so that's 18 years and up programming. So these span from 2-hour classes all the way to adult zoo camps and workshops as well. And the last program that I want to talk about for adults is our Advanced Inquiry program. So this is a graduate degree program that we have here at the Zoo and Botanical Gardens. And it's a program that is in partnership with Miami University. So students are earning their online course degree and coming to the zoo for in-person experiential learning. And as one of these AIP classes that we offer a climate change course. And this course is running currently, it runs every fall semester. And the great thing about this is even if students aren't seeking their degree through this program, we also open this class to community members that just want to take a one-off class in climate education. And we have a couple individuals that have joined the class, just interested, learners in our community. So this obviously is a more in-depth way that we can communicate climate change through a bit more of our formal programming in addition to our informal programming that we have every day at the park. Then I also wanted to talk about our community partnerships and how we can demonstrate on-site resiliency here in the park that can expand and reach visitors so that they can take a little bit of those lessons home after they see kind of what we're doing here on site. One of our great partnerships that we have is we have 3 Florida Fish and Wildlife marine biologists here on site, which is fantastic. They work with our marine mammal response team, which is made up of staff and volunteers here on site, so that if there is a stranded manatee, then our team can go out and collect that manatee with FWC, all leaving here from the same site, and bring it back to our critical care center, which will be expanding with the new Manatee River habitat. And then we also, of course, I know I keep mentioning interpretation and signage, but it is such a piece of how we communicate with the public, and a lot of that is in person. Again, always having education staff in the park that guests can talk to and share about all of the work that we do, and again, plugging in those really important messages such as climate education when we are having those casual conversations in the park. As well as a lot of other community and regional partners throughout the area that have helped us kind of expand some of our signage. So I put St. Johns River Water Management District logo down there in addition to FWC. St. Johns River Water Management District has helped us by adding to our interpretive signage. So when you go down along the Trout River, which is my next picture here, at the park, you have new signs that we have just put up that help people communicate or help people make the connections between the water that they're seeing and water conservation in our area. And lastly, what I wanted to talk about was, again, a little bit of that climate resiliency that we can demonstrate here on site. So our living shoreline that has recently been complete and is just now going ongoing maintenance, that will be, into its entirety. This project has been a long time in the making, and it's great that we have, it's only 180-foot demonstration living shoreline, but it will show people in Jacksonville what it looks like to restore a shoreline to its natural habit, to its natural, to what it will look like naturally, so that they can maybe mimic that where they live, because Jacksonville does have the most shoreline of any city in Florida, which is crazy to think about. But we do have a lot of rivers, a lot of waterways and tributaries that people live along, and maybe they can take some of this example and establish a living shoreline and make their own homes more resilient, as well as businesses and other facilities seeing this as a demonstration for something that they can do on their place as well. And then, of course, we have the signage there explaining this project and do tours and things like that to college groups to talk about what resiliency looks like here on site. So that is what I have here from Jacksonville Zoo Botanical Gardens. So thank you all for listening.
First, I just want to say thank you to all three of our speakers. My camera is not working, but for those of you that don't know me, my name is Janet Reamer. I'm one of the co-coordinators for SOCAN, and I also happen to co-coordinate the Mid-Atlantic CAN. And I'm really excited to see that the acidification message is getting out into communities and zoos and aquariums. We do have a couple of questions in the chat. But just really briefly before I jump to the questions, I want to remind folks, if you have additional questions, please go ahead and put them in. And I'm going to give a shameless plug to a project that all of the CANs worked on a couple of years ago through the Ocean Acidification Alliance, which is a United Nations Foundation funded organization, where all of the CANs put together story maps for their region. And we did this in partnership with the American Zoological Association, I think I'm saying that right, or the AZA, and several different aquariums and different organizations within each region. So I put the link to that page into the chat. And some of the aquariums, like I can speak for the Mid-Atlantic region only on this, unfortunately, but the Baltimore Aquarium, or the National Aquarium in Baltimore, has also been incorporating the Mid-Atlantic acidification story into their signage. So it's great to see that the CANs are starting to have a reach beyond just our scientific network, but into the network of regional education. So with that, I'm going to start with our first question, which was to Katie. And the question was, is there a cost for tours of your facility?
Howdy, yes. Yeah, so we have a minimal cost of just $5 per participant, and that is something that helps support all of our exhibit animals that we do care for in our visitor center. Yes, appreciate the question.
That's great, because a lot of zoos and aquariums, they tend to be a little bit less accessible to some folks. So it's really great to see that there's a more accessible option, and it would be great when that can be a model throughout many more of our communities. Not to say that supporting zoos and aquaria should be, or I'm sorry, like I'm not saying that it's a bad thing that there are costs associated, because obviously we have to care for the animals and the exhibits and the people that take care of them. So another question, this one was for Kristen. It was, how long or in depth did the needs assessment for the C curriculum development span? And was this an assessment that was done in-house by Mote staff?
Yes, so thank you for asking. So it was throughout the academic year, the 23-24 academic year. And basically, I was brought on. That was when I started at Mote. That was my entire first year. What I did was I reached out to, it started with the Sarasota and Manatee County school districts. So first meeting with the superintendent, so right to the top, and then kind of worked the way down. So working closely with the science supervisors in both counties, and then reaching out to every single principal from elementary, middle, and high school, seeing which ones would answer. Not all of them did, but the ones that did, meeting with them and whatever teachers or curriculum leads they brought to the meeting. The ones that didn't, then it included reaching out to those teachers and curriculum leads. So I was able to get in and meet with about half of the schools in each county. So that's about 100 total between the two schools, I should say. It was much more than that when you include the actual number of people, because each meeting had about 4 or 5 people in it when you include the principals, teachers, curriculum leads, all of that. And yeah, it was just me doing all of that. Again, it took about a year to go through. And then in addition to sort of the interview style data that we collected, we also went through all of the state testing scores, again, to really understand how the standards and the benchmarks are breaking down by testing scores. So there's the anecdotal side from the teachers and what they're seeing in the classrooms, and then also what's actually coming out in the test scores. And that's sort of how we aligned it. I hope that answered your question, but I'm happy to expand more if you have more follow-ups.
That was great. I was thinking when you were giving your presentation and talking about the ELA requirement, the English language, I think it's English language assessment. But for those that may not understand what that is, ELA is actually taught in public schools, which it's kind of a way to teach basic understanding of it's like reading comprehension, but we call it something
Exactly.
we call it something different these days. What level for the ELA are you working at there? Because like I know that my kids do it, you know, in elementary school, and then it's called something different in middle school, and then up in high school, I don't think they really talk too much about it. But what level were you trying to target your ELA for?
So I heard that a lot from elementary and middle, but what's really interesting, especially in our counties, I imagine you find this everywhere, I'm just more familiar with it within Sarasota and middle, is that even within local districts, you have such a range of students, you have such a range of learners. What one middle school is getting is so different from what another middle school is getting. So even when you have your arms around what this side of the county understands in terms of sixth grade reading, it's not necessarily the same for another. So what we've started to do is sort of work in brackets. So when we talk about fifth grade ELA or fourth grade or something like that, we work in brackets. So we kind of go by the average or a lower scale, just because, again, we are focusing on science. So while we're not advancing ELA, we use it as a tool to advance the science. So we're scaling down. So even if we're teaching to a sixth grade, if we have to average it to a fourth or a fifth grade, that's sort of kind of the level that we're going to work at. Again, science is the main goal. ELA is the tool to get there. So if we have to step it down, that's what we're going to do.
That's great. I think it makes a lot of sense to keep it lower rather than higher. So we have another question. Actually, it's for you, so I'll just kind of keep going. Do you know how, oh, you put it in the chat. So the question was, do you know how other organizations can get involved with gnocchi? And so Jamie did just put that, oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't for Kristen, it was for Jamie, but Jamie did just put that link in the chat. So if anyone is interested, looks like you can get some more specific information there. And I don't see any other questions, but I will say, I'll just kind of wrap it up by saying, if you would like more information, then you can contact, I put my email address in the chat. Oh, wait, I see, actually there was another question. So let me just ask that quickly. Is there anything that this is all for all three speakers, and if anybody else on the line has any suggestions, please feel free to put it in the chat. Is there anything else that the CANs can do to help with your education, outreach, communication, messaging, either for exhibits, teaching, lessons, etc.?
I'm going to jump in first. Sorry, Jamie.
Oh, go ahead.
One thing that is going to be really helpful for me and a project that we're undertaking is we're actually working on kind of redesigning our front space for our visitor center. And at the moment, it has more of a lab sterile field as feel that you kind of expect, given the majority of work that we do. And so I'm very interested in, and we'll be reaching out to a number of organizations, just kind of asking for graphics and things as I build some of our interpretive panels that we'll be installing to help convey that message, and again, kind of about how, how we do our research in the facility and how that translates into their community. And so that is something I'm very excited to explore the resources that both Emily, Jamie, and Kristen have shared as well. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Something I would add too, at a facility, that is a zoo, and a lot of people think of zoos as entertainment spaces still. So just sharing that zoos, are conservation organizations, and that the different programming exists, so people can, get involved and learn through programmings as well as just attending the zoo.
Yeah, I guess sort of similar along with the information, the signage, things like that, sharing sort of, I know data's tricky, but authentic images, authentic information and data. So it's not us just interpreting and sort of making it fit based on the back end information, but again, sort of what my whole presentation piece was about, but actually using what's coming from the science side in the outreach and education side. So it's that authentic piece. It's not sort of the strict interpretation. It's real, it's tangible. It creates that sense of belonging for the learners. I think that's really important, and it's pretty impactful.
Well, definitely, I just want to comment on that. Definitely reach out to GCAN and SOCAN. In our regions here, we can point you into the right direction for data streams. And for researchers who are working on it directly in your areas and stuff. So yeah, that's one of our goals, is to help get the messages out. So definitely reach out to any of us, and we'll help.
We all appreciate that. Thank you.
Now I do not see any more questions in the chat, so we will wrap it up. Thanks again for attending our webinar today. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you to GCAN. It's always great to partner across the CAN networks to be able to spread the message. So again, if you have any thoughts or ideas individually on how the CANs can help you in your region, please feel free to reach out to us. And again, to those education and conservation centers, the OA story maps are online, they are free, and they are open source. So feel free, because we put a lot of effort and thought into those to try to get specifically to the communities that need the information. Thanks everyone, and definitely look for this on the Socorro YouTube and the SOCAN and GCAN websites. It's great seeing you all.
Thank you all.